Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the SRC podcast. Joining me, Big M, as always, the one and only Mr. Reliable Double R, Rob Reese. Good evening, my friend. How are we?
All good, sir. All good. I don't know why it feels like a bit longer since we've been on the pod this week. I don't know why.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it does feel a bit strange this week for some random reason. Who knows? Who knows? Bookie, Mr. John Harris, has sent his apologies. He's having some childish problems. Apparently, his daughter has decided to throw a bit of a wobbly and has woken up the baby. So he's now on dad duty instead of talking rugby, which, as we know, dad duty comes first unless it's Saturday at 2:30. So, why don't we just dive straight into it? Just the results to bring you this week. We will be covering the games next week. Obviously, we got a free Saturday, and all because the 20s have a little training day, which for me is baffling. No, this
Yeah.
that's 2 years worth of players. There's like 15 years worth of players in the league. I'm sure you could have played without them. I'm guessing the academy boys aged 20 to 23 don't matter now. Apparently, ah, it is what it is. We just got to deal with it. Okay, so we will go straight back to last Thursday and the televised game after Swansea really shocked us all with a 42-40 win against Newport away. They looked to do the double down at Dunvant, who's had his first televised game in God knows how long, if ever, maybe. I'm
I,
really not sure.
I don't know. I know Newport's used to, play Dunvant in the early 2000s quite a few times in the old table setup. So maybe there's a fixture there somewhere. But I gotta be honest, I thought the ground looked good. You know,
It did.
it's it was full, it was characterful as well. It had enough of everything. Seeing the pictures from the press box and stuff like that is, it's a good little setup up there. So, in fairness to Swansea, they've done well in terms of the move. It's better
Yeah.
ground than St. Helens.
Yeah, and to be fair, there's so much space down here. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong, it's a bit awkward to get into, driving through all the side streets and then you'll go all the way down the bottom and tuck in. But once you're in there, you've parked the car and there's just so much space. There's a couple pitches behind as well, which, if you're taking kids down there, like that's the main reason I know my girls used to play for Stradi's Hotspurs and we'd head down there for games all the time. And the amount of space down there is brilliant. Fair play to them. But on to the actual rugby. Swansea against Newport in technically a neutralish sort of game, really, for the time being, while Swansea do set it up as their home. And, once again, Newport are struggling. They really are. This is now 0 for 4. Christ, we didn't think we'd be saying that. So give us a little bit of a rundown of the game. Where was this won and lost?
Um, there's a few areas. I think Newport at the moment are so sloppy with what they do. Um, yeah, the conditions are awful, but that's the same for two sides, right? And they didn't manage it well at all. They were sloppy around the breakdown, the handling errors, the deal discipline. That first 15 minutes to give Swansea a two-score lead. Ty Morris can have a go at the officials on S4C after the game and say he thought that opening 15 minutes was abysmal from them, but ultimately you're putting yourself under pressure, right? That's the words of a coach who's played for, lost for as the defending champions. They haven't looked good at all yet, I'll be honest. And their set piece just isn't firing as well as it sort of did and as well as it should. They're missing, characters like Ben Roach far more than I think they should be missing them, but I just don't think they've got that back balance either. They just seem to run out of ideas. Like, yes, Swansea built that two-score lead. Newport sort of fought back, and the next hour, given the conditions, and Swansea playing into the wind in the first half sort of helped them massively because what it did was force Newport into scoring tries late on. Newport elected not to go for points throughout the game. They went to the corner and ended up overthrowing 2 5-metre lineouts, making mistakes again inside the red zone. You can't do that when you're trying to put sides away because opportunities don't just keep coming, especially when they said Swansea are a good side this year. They're fourth in the table. They're not like the best of the rest. You know, they're not just scraping above Newport. They're fourth in the table, and only the three sides above them you would probably have said are two of the outstanding teams. Before a ball was kicked. So you're looking at half time goes in, and I'll be honest, right before that half, Newport are attacking. And I think what summed this game up and what won Swansea the game was that desire to just kick on that little bit. They had that ferocity, they had that physicality that I haven't seen in many sides yet this season. Not that there's not been a good quality, but I haven't seen just that raw, gladiator on the field. Like Hopkins and Bowden in the back row were absolutely outstanding. A couple of massive tackles late on. Jack Lloyd got flattened God knows how many times in this game, legally as well, right? These were in late cheap shots. Newport knocked the ball on and off they go for the half, right? Swansea got the lead. They come out, Newport again, sort of fighting back and forth, close the gap a little bit. And what summed this game up and what has summed Newport season up, but also Swansea's to a degree, is they had ball 40 metres off the Swansea goal line. They can't kick for goal. The wind is so bad. They need the points, etc. You think, right, there's a draw coming, possibly, but 40-metre kick is probably 50, 55 metres given the conditions. It's also not good underfoot, right? So everything's working against you. And Swansea's defence, off the back of the line out, they lost 20 metres. They drove them back, and it was as soon as they entered their own half, they just ran out of ideas. Like Jack Lloyd, of all people, yeah, you can say fair play, he had a try. They were in their 22 for 5 or 6 phases. They're going backwards each carry. You try to chip over the top, it gets charged down, and Swansea take away Newport's only bonus point. And that just sums it up. Newport are so sloppy, lackadaisical, making mistakes, not really controlling any part of the game. Where Swansea have really stuck in there. They've got 2 wins, and it's fair to say, though, a double over Newport is fantastic, for any team. But to kickstart their season, they are really looking good with it now, and that's the key for me is just a bit of desire.
Yeah, there's that sort of controlled aggression everyone always talks about, and you could really see it coming through at the fore. I mean, like you said, some of those hits were coming through, but you talk about that chip kick that Jack Lloyd tried to do it. That's pure frustration. That's been forced into making those bad decisions, and quite clearly he will look back on that. He'll go through analysis. He'll do what obviously love the analysis with the Dragons as well, and we're saying, what were you thinking there? You'll go, I've no idea. I really don't know why I tried that because there was nothing to suggest it was going to come
Nothing at all.
off.
It was none. Like you're chipping over the top. You got literally 80 meters to go, but it just was none. And even I'll be honest, even the kick looked. I'm not saying lazy. It looked tired. Everything Newport did was met by something that, like counter rucking towards the end. How many times did Newport knock it on at the back of a maul, the base of a scrum, or off the back of a ruck? Because Swansea were putting them under so much pressure, it was forcing he was forcing the errors, and that wins you games. It really does. These are the sort of close games that Swansea weren't having that extra gear last year. Jack Lloyd would have chipped over the top, gathered it, and he'd have gone the length of the field. I think the outstanding player this year, Morgan Williams, but I think is Di Richards. And I'd be honest, I think Di adds a bit of a mixed game, and that just says even he looked frustrated at times, and that's perfect as an opposition player and a supporter. Where they looked frustrated, and they've got to regather themselves because they've got some big fixtures coming up.
Yeah, they do. Well, there are no easy fixtures. This is
No,
just providing that the Ebu Vale are the only team, and I hate saying this because of you, but they're the only team that is putting others away, and so that really opens it up. One, how long will that last? And then you've got the other 9 sides who are really stupidly close in with each other. Or some of the results we've seen already are just bewildering for us. You
well, that's
know,
just it. Yeah, you look at the gap between Llandovery and Newport. It's 15 points. Now that's 4 games. In any other league, you could only get 5 points. So realistically, that's down to 11 points. In another league's term, that's 11 points difference between Llandovery and Newport. How many leagues after 4 rounds have 11 points between the top team and the bottom team? And bearing in mind the top team, the top two, are both unbeaten as well. Like it is such a quality league. People are picking up bonus points, and that's fantastic to see. Like I said, I'll be honest, we haven't had a bad TV game yet.
No,
This,
we really haven't. We've been spoiled.
yeah, in terms of the rugby quality, yes, this week's was the lowest quality, but the conditions had most of that to deal with. But it was still a fantastically compelling game of rugby. It was literally poetic. I was going back and forth, and Swansea were getting stuck in, and it was great to see the commentary picking up a lot about the crowd, and so yeah, it's such a good league this year, and I think that this sort of fixture sums it up. Like I say, who would have had Newport's bottom? I mean, it's only a couple of years since they've lost four on the bounce to start the season. Is it 4 years? The last time they lost 5 fixtures on the bounce, league fixtures to start the season, was 1978.
That is a while. But I tried to compare Newport's first 4 games last season, and it's probably true of Newport all the way through last season. They make a lot of changes, whether that's personnel or just swapping between bench and 15. And I'm thinking, okay, last season, you're winning games for fun, but I'm looking at the sheer amount of changes they've made game on game in these opening rounds, and I'm like, you're losing. No,
Yeah,
this chopping
continuity.
and chopping and changing when you're losing is always
They,
terrible. And obviously, there's going to be some sort of balance with your academy players. But obviously, Chatham made his debut at 6. You know, you're on a 3-game losing run. You go in away to the team you just lost to, and you bring in a debutant on in at 6. And this isn't someone who's established. This is a kid.
they,
And don't get me wrong. You could have the best game in the world. That's there's no sense being made there for that decision.
yeah,
So
I think to me you can see that they're just lacking that balance. They haven't settled on a big lock combo. Like Josh Skinner and Joe Pearce had the size, but they haven't really settled around who they're picking in around there with the front row. That's not doing the out and out work that it was last year. The back row balance around your open side, blind side is very difficult to hit at the best of times. But again, especially with Ben Roach missing at 8, is who's the ball carrier there, who's your jackler, who's your tackler, who's the person slowing that ruck speed down, and they got a 9 and 10 combo. I just don't think is working yet. And you got when you're playing Jack Lloyd at 12, that's not his position. I don't think Carwyn Penny works at 15. It's there's so much around in terms of just the balance of the squad. And no, yes, last season was a big one emotionally. 150 years winning the title for the first time in 10, 11 years, whatever it was. Doing it in the manner they did with Brian passing away late on in the season, all of that, the trip to Texas at the end of it, you know, it's a long emotional journey, but there's sloppiness, and it's like they're in search of something that's just going to click. And I'll be honest, Matt O'Brien is sort of like, this is what sums it up for me. A couple of years ago, you could call Matt O'Brien in and he would single-handedly win you a game. They called him back for the final last year. He had to fly back from South Africa because the Dragons were out
yeah,
in South Africa. And Matt O'Brien's words in the clubhouse after the game was he was blowing out his ass and he felt he nearly cost Newport the game. Like, don't get me wrong, that I think that's a harsh assessment of it, right? But what that means, and you can see it this year, is he's not having that instant impact, that sort of, oh, hang on a minute, he's changing the game as he was last season or the season before, especially. And that's what they're missing at the moment. They're just missing a bit of stardom, quality, and a bit of balance.
yeah. So I managed to catch up with Ty a little bit after. Not too many words, but Loss to Swansea was, disappointing and marks, a really tough start to this block with 4 straight defeats. However, the group's commitment and determination to turn things around remains outstanding. So I tried to press a bit more and asked, because he made that comment on Espedrec that maybe he should have changed expectations coming into this season. So asked him, well, what's going on? Are you sticking with your game plan, or you looking to try something new? And he's kept his cards really close to his chest and said he'd rather keep that in house. So I think there's a lot of nerves
Yeah.
going on there, which it's understandable, obviously, but it's a hard time, and quite frankly, unless they can somehow turn on a massive second half performance in their next game, it's hard to see where their win's going to come from. Because and I can't believe we're actually saying this, because these are the words we were saying about Swansea last season. You know, we'll get on to Quins in a bit, but they are putting teams in a really, really hellish position in the first 40. And the state that this Newport team seems to be in, they 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 wouldn't climb back up that hill. I think they would crumble even further. So it's really unfortunate. I do hope things change after the visit to Quins, obviously. But there we are. So that was 24-14 in Swansea's favour. Travel now to Talbot Athletic Ground to see Aberavan Bridgend take two. Obviously, we had this game on TV the week prior, where Aberavan, really solidified a solid victory there, and it looked, for all intents and purposes, it was going to go the same way. 21-5 at half time. Aberavan really in the ascendancy, and fair dues to Scott Baldwin and his men. They somehow managed to turn this one around, and 36-26 winners. I mean, both of this double header has gone to the away side, which is quite interesting to say the least. But we were wondering what was going to happen. I don't think any of us backed Bridgend for this. We thought it was a step too far, but here we are. It just goes to show anything can happen, and we got another close game, another surprising result. Just wow! I mean, Aberravon have been incredibly strong. Bridgend have looked they didn't look at their peak compared to last season, but they've just pulled out a big win against a team that's performing really well. I mean, it's hard to say who's really been the better over these two games.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. Like I said, you pull that far ahead in the game, and because you are that far ahead, there's a tendency to do two things. You either put your foot on the throat and off you sail into the sunset and you win the game by 40 points, or you become a bit complacent and a bit nervous about what you're doing, and you make mistakes. And it seemed like that's what happened with Aberavan and Bridgend have got, I think, the better depth at the moment. They utilise that to their advantage. They got on top of the forwards, winning that battle. And Aberavan seemed to lose a bit of structure. I felt around the park. It was, you only got to see the tries, and there's men everywhere. There's like a buddy scene from Zulu where there's just red shirts just randomly scattered all over the place. Yeah, Bridgend breaking the line, and there's interceptions and all this sort of thing going on. And once you get back, like I'll be honest, once Bridgend got that score, was it 26-21 or whatever it was, they got the score to pull ahead. It was like you just didn't feel that this was one Aberravon were going to wrestle back, and that's what I worry with Aberravon this season is they look good with ball in hand, and when they're the team having their momentum patches, but when they lift off, they struggle and they leak points. You know, it's one of those games, yes, where both sides leak a large amount of points, but you've got to be able to control these games and ultimately stop that sway of momentum. You can't have such big peaks and troughs. I think Jason Hyatt, and I'm putting words in his mouth here, but I'm sure he would agree, would much rather a more consistent product than have your world beating stars for 40 minutes, and then you couldn't beat the bloody Crummock side in the second 40. You know what I mean? So it's just balancing it out. But like you said, Scott Baldwin found that balance. I think at the moment it's interesting to see what he's doing with his 10-12 combo and the options he's got around that. Ben Burnell obviously not just fully coming into this straight away. But yeah, fantastic result for Bridgend. Puts them in third as well, which is roughly where they were after 4 games last season. I'm gonna say because I think last season they played 4 games, were high up the table, and then played Ebervale at the Brewery Field. So it's similar pattern. And again, can they start finding this consistency? I think that's what we worried about with Bridgend as we're speaking along. Is it's not a consistency in the games, but can you string a good few battles together now? Can you take things take your positives and put that into victories and put that into 80-minute performances? Because that's what they can do. I'll be honest, they'd be disappointed they lost at home to Aberafan in the way they did. They sort of lost momentum a bit late on in that one. But yeah, again, another entertaining game of rugby. And yeah, Aberafan are only 10 points off the lead, yeah, and have already beaten Newport at home. So this one is not a bad indicament of one, how strong Aberafan are despite the loss, but also where Bridgend are.
Yeah, I mean, we've already spoken about it a few times that Bridgend had some issues in their pack last season. They've recruited pretty strongly, but and we know the type of man that Scott Baldwin is, the type of coach he's becoming. He believes in the fully professional setup whilst you're in the environment. So I did get a few words from him. I won't give all of them because, yeah, 2 minute voice note is it's a lot to get through. But I'll give you the cliff notes. So basically, we're really happy to get the 5 points after the disappointment of last week, and it's the first time he felt they've been comfortable with it coming into those last few minutes. I thought they managed conditions really well. Even coming in at 21-5 at half time. You had a few chances that just weren't coming off, but you felt they were really set up well, especially with the bench for the second half. So managed it really well, and get that impact from the bench and to see the game out tremendously happy with. Overall in this block, they sort of give themselves a 6 out of 10, which probably a fair reflection. And yeah, he's really happy with how it started. Obviously, there's some more to come. And he's pinpointed that, Ryan Wilkins has still come back in with them this year. And he's, taken time out to give some special praise to Academy back three player Ben Evans, 18-year-old. He's only had 3 games of senior rugby, but they said he's looking to be a real special player. So he's definitely one to keep your eye on if you're ever in and around watching Bridgend or you see on TV. Ben Evans, who knows? Scott Baldwin says he's got a future. So I don't know. I always seem to think that Scott is very, very calm, very fair, and he's really reflective on what he sees, which is obviously it's an indictment of a good coach. So you agree with most of what he says? Think 6 out of 10 is probably fair to this agenda.
Yeah,
Do you think they can get to 10?
6 out of 10 is fair. When you win two, you lose two. But let's focus on the 2 wins. Late home win, didn't give up, battling against a very strong Quinn side, and a massive comeback victory away to a strong Aberafan side. So yeah, 2 very good victories, right? You've lost twice as well. The Aberafan at home game, that's the one disappointment. I think they win that game, they're having an 8 or 9 out of 10. If they just control that final 10 minutes, that's an 8 or 9 out of 10. The Ebervale game, Ebervale are far, far better than Bridgend at the moment, if we're being honest. They're in a different place in their journey. And they just got that step up of quality, and that's why the gap was a 6 point victory. And I'll be honest, it probably would have been more if Ebervale hadn't had late yellow cards to give Bridgend 2 late tries. So 6 out of 10 is fair. Do I think they can reach 10? I don't know if 10 is possible. I think they're probably going to have to start tipping off some of these big teams for that. I mean, your Llandovery, Ebervale, and let's see what they can do against Newport as well. The pre-season favourites, should I call them. let's see what they do against those sort of sides, and then let's make a judgment call. I think, like I said, it doesn't take a lot for this season already to be a 9. In reality, I think one 10-minute spell changes that. You know, if they look a good side, they put in ball through hand nicely. We mentioned it before they kicked the ball. The recruitment I liked. The two props have really steadied up that sort of pack, and they've got some good youngsters coming through. Academy or otherwise. The Bridgend pathway working with Bridgend College is working nicely as well. In fairness, so yeah, this is a side that's firmly on the up. I hope they can put a few more 80 minutes together, because they are that team this season that I feel could shock a few people in terms of knocking off a Landovery at Church Bank, or turning over Cardiff Newport on the road. That sort of victory. That's genuinely where I think this Bridgend side could be. So yeah, I do think there's high hopes from this season. I just hope now they can kick on.
So that was a 36-26 win for Bridgend at Aberafan. On to our second big comeback story of the weekend. Pontypool at home to Carmarthen Quins. Quins winning the reverse up at Carmarthen Park 24-12. And it looked set to be going exactly the same way again. 21-3 in favour of Carmarthen at the half. From everything I've been able to find out, Quinn's scrum was absolutely amazing and really put Pontypool under a hell of a lot of pressure. So, and I know from speaking with Steph Thomas, he's really annoyed given the dominance they had in that area of the field to eventually lose the game, and losing that second half 21-0 to go down 24-21. I mean, this is the second game in a row. Admittedly, it is Pontypool both games where Quins haven't scored a single point in the second half. I don't know why. It's just hard going. It really is for me at the minute to just, despite the win last week, when you're not scoring points in a full 40, if it's the first 40 and then you come out stronger after, I can get away with it a little bit more. You can kind of go, okay, they were warming up, they were stepping through the gears, but this is the opposite. They've gone through the gears, they've gone over the try line, 3 tries to the good, and then they've just gone, no. But yeah, I'm terribly gutted, especially that the score came really really late. But Pontypool will be overjoyed. They didn't lose 2 on the bounce at home, and more points on the board for them. So you were our resident. I'll be honest, you're the expert on everyone, to be fair, but you are our Dragons Gwent region. So Pontypool, oof, what do you think? Yeah, like I've got words from Tom Hancock, but do you think they'll be happy with this? They've got the win.
Um, I think this is the diving board for them now. This is the platform for them to kick on. I think this is they needed something just to dig their feet into, and right, let's get going now and move on. They're still missing people like Mikey Herbert. They're still missing people like Morgan Allen, and the front row is still an issue. I know that sounds like, oh, hang on, man, I just highlighted 5 of 8 forwards, but yes, that is an issue throughout the game. They're missing that bit of a nastiness, I'll be honest. A bit of assertiveness. I don't like to call it aggression. That people like Morgan Allen, like a bit like Richie McCaw, that they live on the edge of the game, and that's fantastic as a back rower or as a second rower, depending on where they'd put him in. But yeah, I feel there's a bit of work to be done around the midfield combo. I don't think Mahoney's playing his best at the moment. I think they just need to settle down in midfield, get their back three firing, because it is a dangerous back three, and they've got a good halfback combination to really get things going. From a Quinn's perspective, at the moment they don't look fit after 60, from what I can see. And this is a pattern from last season as well. I mean, you look towards the end of last season where they were up at Eugene Cross. They looked like they were going to take the shield off Ebervale with 10 minutes to go, but they conceded 25 points in 15 minutes. It's that same old pattern we talk about what have teams actually learned, and I know there's different things and a lot of stuff that Steph and the team have worked on with Quins, and there's a young team in areas and a bit of rotation and sort of what Scarlett's allocation they can get. But I just don't think that they've got that experience in closing games out, and it's starting to show. I said after the Cardiff game, you could see that the 9-10 combo, as good as they are with a bit of ball in hand and distributing, they're not running the show. They're not the sheriff of that town. They're the ones who get a bit of praise when it goes right, but ultimately they're not the ones calling the shots. Um, and that's giving Quins a bit of an issue, I'll be honest. They've got a good platform. Pooler did get into them, and I think that's just the tiredness. But yeah, I think Tom Hancock would be reasonably pleased with this. I think you got to get your name back on the winning side of the board, especially at home. And Quinn's not a bad side here, right? Let's get into that pitch would have hurt Quinn's sapping sort of pitch. Um, but yeah, I think there's positives for both sides. But I think Quins would be disappointed that they haven't scored a point in the last two second halves, as you say.
Yeah. So let's hear from both men in charge. So Tom Hancock first. Pleased with the second half performance and a very pleasing comeback against a strong Quins outfit. Showed character when the boys delivered on the intensity and accuracy that we'd spoken about. We were really the better team, scoring 21 unanswered points in that second half. It's been a frustrating opening block. Haven't really settled into any rhythm, but two from four isn't disastrous, and it's proven to be a very competitive league with all improved teams throughout. Still working through some combinations, and we've been hit by injuries already, which has prevented some consistency. But developing in our play, but we're confident that we've got all the ingredients, and once we click, we'll be a match for anyone. So that was Pontypool's Tom Hancock, and Steph Thomas of Quinn's bitterly disappointed to let an 18-point lead slip. The answer for the defeat definitely lies within our group, which is a good thing. We'll take our medicine, lick our wounds, and prepare for a battle with Newport. Our set piece, was stronger than theirs, and for them to win the game, with a set piece that was going backwards at times, it is baffling me. But that's about as much as he has to say on the game. It's more a bit repetitive, if you get what I mean. Decent start to the year, good couple wins. We've got a lot of young talent coming through. None more so than Carwyn Leggett-Jones, who made his debut off the bench. He had suffered a concussion before this, why he hasn't appeared recently. So I'm glad that I can touch on Carwyn Leggett-Jones there, because he is still a young boy. He's still 17, and he's got 10 caps for Wales 18s. He's made an appearance for Wales 20s at an uncapped game. I know this boy has got a lot of potential. So I'm glad to have finally seen him, in an SRC pitch. Obviously, seen him with Wales 18, seen him with Llandovery College, etc., etc. And I'm really hoping that he gets that 10 shirts sooner rather than later. I know it's kind of a balance. Ellis Price as well, being another Scarlet. I've watched this boy play. He's got a lot of potential. Like he's only 5'8", 84 kilos, I think. He's last weighed himself in at, but so he's got the weight behind him. He's just adjusting to that physical game, and this could be a massive thing for Quins. You talked about Obi single-handedly winning games for Newport. Not immediately. I'm not saying immediately, but he seems to be the type of player that can single-handedly win games. He's been doing it for years with his junior clubs, with schools, college. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he develops. In terms of Pontypool, Tom has singled out last year's under-20 soccer Evan Wood as one to keep an eye on, not attached to a region, but is proven to be a very, very handy player. Oh, 24-21 Pontypool win. That was a bit of a long rant, long conversation by me then, talking about everyone. So that brings us on to our final game of the week, obviously Cardiff against Ebbw Vale was postponed because, well, Cardiff's post had a little tip. So Llandovery ran out 41-31 winners against RGC up north last week, and we all pretty much expected the first 6-pointer for Drovers, but RGC they had other things in mind. 2010 lead in at halftime, and they were 35-29 up on the 79th minute going into the red, and Drovers do what Drovers do. They grind it out. They find a way, not playing particularly great throughout the entirety of the game, but they do what they have to do and they go over and they get 5 points. Just
Yeah.
36-35 winners. I mean, wow. This is heartbreaking for RGC.
It is. It was a very disruptive sort of game in terms of RGC got a couple of scores and had a two score lead for 60 minutes. So they'll be extremely disappointed that they've let that slip. But what was impressive for me was they got stuck in, with especially around the mall and disrupted Llandovery there. Got some fluidity going forward with it, but also stopping a few shunts from the Drovers. It was good to hear the away support as well, which is always something that's good to hear, no matter who it was. And I just want to say RGC and Bridgend support was superb this weekend. You can actually hear it on the Tri-Lights videos as well, which is always a nice thing. But yeah, RGC just absolutely tailed off, and whether this is a bit of depth or a bit of the momentum swinging, but Llandovery score one try with a few minutes to go, and you're going, okay, right, let's just calm this down. We're still 35-29 at that stage. You're going, we're still a converted try away. The mall breaks free at the end, and I know I've credited RGC with a bit of success at the mall, but this one they just couldn't do anything about. It was swaying back and forth. It looked like they were going to come in fields, then RGC stopped it, then it sort of swayed around, and you get the try right in the corner. So the linesman's obviously putting his thumb up to that one as well. And Johan Hughes has to do a touchline conversion to win the game. It's shit or bust basically with that kick. You miss it, you take 2 points. Which, all right, fair enough. They'd still be joint top of the table on points, but it is a bit of a sickener. But for RGC, this is that next level that we say, is you can score 35 points. We've said it many times. They haven't got a problem scoring the points, especially on artificial surfaces like Church Bank. But you cannot win a game if you're averaging 30 plus points conceded a game. And they've done it again. You can't concede 40 points last week, 36 this week, 41 was it against Car. You're averaging 35, 36 points a game conceded. You're not going to win games. It sounds ridiculous. RGC have won one game this season. They won't win any more if they concede an average of 35, 36 points a game.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And, their win against Pontypool 23-14 is an anomaly.
Yeah,
47 against Cardiff, 41 in game one against Llandovery, then 36. It's unsustainable.
What it tells me as well is that's the only game on grass. So they've had 2 games at home and 1 game at Church Bank, all on the artificial surfaces. And they've conceded 125 points in that time. 120 points there, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
And they haven't won any of those games, and yet they've scored 100 points. You've scored 100 points in 3 games on artificial surface, which is your own backyard sort of surface, and you still haven't come away. So it's telling me that at the moment they just don't have a game plan structurally. Yeah, you can say, oh well, they did Pontypool over. Pontypool are having a really rough time of it at the moment. And I'll be honest, that looked like a good performance from RGC. But they're just not suiting this quick pace at the moment. If you're not resetting your pillars, you're not getting your exits right. you can't stop that sort of that peel off of 10, 12, and sort of the cuts inside. It's, how many tackles do you watch in these highlight videos, especially this week, where it's a one-up ball carrier and they make it 4 or 5 meters on a tackle. And like straight away, your defence is all having to shunt back and then reset and peel around the back if you're coming off a set piece to have any sort of forwards on the blind side. Land have really got far too much pace and experience to get outside it when both the Warren boys are in scoring tries that are 40, 50 metres. And ultimately, that's because the ball is breaking down around the ruck. The pillars aren't doing their job. There's nobody slowing the ball down. Fackrell was a big loss with this. Dan Owen's the same. When they're not playing, you're not slowing that ruck speed down to 3 seconds, which is what you'll be aiming for, sub 3 seconds, right? So therefore, that recycling's there. Oh, hang on a minute, your defender's not the pillar of the ruck. Bam, straight down the middle of the park. Your fullback's 1-on-1 or 2v1 if you've got somebody in support.
Yeah, you can add Rodri King to that list of players who would be in that breakdown messing around. It just seems to me they're scoring these lovely, really high paced, high tempo tries, and then it's taken them so long to recover. They've already conceded another 7 or 10 points before they're even back ready to go. So defense is one thing that is massively needed to be worked on, and I think we've been saying that for a long time. Drover's still yet to click, which again, this second in the table, undefeated, 4 wins, four single bonus point wins tour, which is great. Comments from both coaches. So John Callard, RGC, first time I'm being able to read out something from him. Considering everything that we have been dealing with, we have performed well. We've not had the decisions on the bounce of the ball, but the rugby we have tried to play is a credit to everyone involved. Areas to focus on moving forward has been better at dealing with mistakes. Mistakes are fine, but there's our next steps of actions that we need to deal with. Love the concept of the league to uncover talent. And that's what I intend to do here. I kind of followed him up a bit more on that, and he's name dropped Tudor Jones, a young scrum half, and Will Kerr at the lock as two that are doing really well. Obviously, they've produced Dylan Alford and Tom Cottle, who are now with Llandovery and Cardiff, respectively. But sort of asked him how the RGC pathway sort of works. Are they there to make boys for the other four regions? And he says he's trying to work out for himself. So that tells you everything you need to know about RGC. But I'm not seeing enough accountability in that. I mean, saying you're not getting the decisions or the bounce of the ball is. Uh, I would like to see more accountability on that. Saying there's dealing with mistakes is one thing, but you conceding that many tries. It's not. You concede one, maybe two tries from mistakes a game, and you're like, we need to work on our mistakes. We need to recover from these errors. We need to sort them out. There's bigger priorities than cutting out the error rate on at those sort of times in the game. I don't know what you would take from that is, but I've also got a little something from Euros, wherever he may be in my little book of wonders. Delighted we found a way to get the win. Full credit to RGC. They deserve more. Highlights how competitive the league is this year. Been really pleased with the amount of game time we've been able to give to some of the younger academy players during these few games, all of whom have contributed positively. As with all young players, there are work-ons, but getting them on the field is important for their development. That is something that we're seeing from Llandovery this year. I mean, 8, 9 boys, I think, in 3 games from the academy. 4, 5 was generally the max. I think 3 was the average all last season. So it's a fairly big shift for them in that terms. So for them to still be winning and winning well with the bonus point is it's brilliant for them. But again, I think it all comes back to RGC, and their issues are really, really at the forefront, and they're not dealing with it.
Yeah, ultimately, it's if we don't deal with these issues, Like we know RG, like it's no disrespect to John Callard and what he's gonna come in. He's only been there a short while, but we all know what RGC's game plan is. It's fast open game of rugby. They have been for the 15 or so years that they've existed. They have never changed or altered from there. They've never been a big marauding pack. They've never relied on set piece. I'm not saying they've never had a good one, but they've never relied on it. So yet another coach is going in. I've mentioned about the turnover of coaches up there since they first came through with Rupert Moon right at the start. Um, but it's no one has ever addressed the issue of we can't defend. And I know that sounds ridiculous, an easy thing to do, but it's so basic structure is if you're not going to slow the ball down, your defence isn't fit enough, or the structure you're implementing doesn't work for the team you have because they can't get into the space. They can't man mark quick enough, and that's why you're conceding like 40 points a game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that does wrap up our last game of the week, and this is normally the time I tell you to like, share, subscribe. Which, if you haven't already done so, please do. It helps a lot, and it could even help your club. We would really like to use any sort of money we raise to one, pay the Zoom fees, which is always good. But if you listen to our Saucepans, the Scarlets podcast, you know that we sponsor a game with Newcastle Emlyn every year. That's where any money we bring in goes. It goes on one covering our costs and then try and putting it back into the community. So
Yeah,
you
your
you
wages.
you subscribe. The few thousand SRC pod listeners. You all subscribe, and boom. That's some money. Who knows? We could probably even sponsor Newport. Maybe buy him a win. Hey, okay. We're on to a break now, so let's have a quick look at the top scorers as we might as well. 4 rounds in, it's generally a good time. So with only 3 games, Edward Vale's Ian Morris leads the try list with four. I believe there are 11 players on three. Few more hookers in there, a couple wings. Yeah, just generally shows you. I think it's just wings and hookers. That is what it is. We nip
That sounds
over
like a good Saturday night. That is
hookers and
wings,
wings,
wings and hookers.
wings and hookers. I think we just got the name for this week's episode. Thank you,
Wings and hookers.
everybody, and thank you all the wings and hookers who are scoring. Okay, top league point scorer. Currently, Johan Hughes is sitting on top with 41. Josh Phillips right in behind him on 40. Ellis Price, who was leading, is down on 38. Keelan Cullen, 34. Dion Jones, who was playing 10 this week, which is, not something we've seen a great deal of, with 31. And then everyone else sort of, you get into some of your top try scorers and that as well then. So obviously, still tight, still early doors, but we've seen a bit of a pattern here. And boom, should you going to make a shout for who's going to be top try scorer this year?
Ooh, see, oh, that's tasty. I'm just trying to think, see, because
If Francio Morris, that's all you're going to pick. Well, Joe
yeah,
Franch, I need to say.
but that's just it. They rotate, see. So someone if Cardiff have a good run, it could be Derry Morris. Derry Morris, Jesus Christ, Derry Cross.
He is one of those on 3 tries.
He is him and Joe Goodchild, I believe.
Yeah, they are.
Goodchild's always good for a try.
Yeah, Bridgens, Macaulay Rowley, if he stays fit, brilliant. Obviously,
Even
another one of you was David Thomas. He's been on fire since coming in. Fair play to the boy.
the thing I see with Rowley is he started quick last year, didn't he? He had 7 or 8 quickly last year, and I'm not saying faded away, but he didn't keep it up to the end of the season as you'd expect.
Yeah, we probably have to go back and look at the team sheets and see really if there's a reason for that or not.
Yeah, he should have.
Rodri King, after his transfer to Swansea, has got 3. Corey Lewis for Bridgend. Obviously, Franchi has to make a name. Oh, Finn Baker of Newport. There we go. Newport have got a high up the table somewhere. That's always nice. It's nice to see.
I tell you who I think will get a decent amount of tries. Whether I don't think he'll finish top, is Jacob Hopkins at Swansea.
Yeah, you like him to score a try or two, do you?
He's a he's a big boy.
You can see that Rob has had an interaction with him. He's a big boy. Okay, we've filled a little bit for this podcast, but that brings us to a close for this week. We'll be back next week with just previews, and remember, it is Ebbw Vale v Llandovery for the Shield live on S4C. That's going to be a game. Hopefully, we'll have the team sheets ready. We can really scrutinize that one. Until then, guys, goodbye.
Super.
Super.